What were my takeaways from BDS versus NRG? On the day, BDS was the better team. Realistically, you look at both those rosters, and I think at any given moment, both of them could beat each other. But on the given day, NRG, it wasn't theirs. It wasn't NRG's day. It was BDS's. So BDS won. I think that's the beauty of majors and everything else that goes on with Rocket League nowadays. When you get to the big moments and the big matches, who's playing better? You know, it's not that any one team is better than the other, but on that day, they most certainly are. I think that's the cool thing about the majors and the World Championship and the circuit-based format now is we no longer have to have the argument, hey, who's the best in the world? If you win the World Championship after a year of competition, you're the best team in the world, and you got to defend that title next year. I think it's really cool that we're finally starting to see this developmental stage of RLCS. Now that we are in a circuit-based system with actual international competition, we are getting some of those answers in regards to the way that we view teams and who's better, who's worse, etc. And I don't think anybody necessarily top 8, right? I think at any given day, one of those teams could win the whole thing, depending on how they're playing, how they're feeling on the day. I feel any one of those teams that was in top 8, right? Whether it be Dignitas, Semper, Complexity, BDS, FaZe, Endpoint, Sandrock, NRG. If they're vibing on the day and things are going well, none of those matches were a blowout by any means. I think Complexity was a little bit outclassed by BDS. Maybe that's the only one, and they'll get better in time. But all those teams have capability to win the entire thing. So I do feel that looking at that, it's unfair, I would say, to disqualify any from that conversation, if that makes sense. So I do feel at the end of the day, when it talks about BDS and NRG, BDS was just the better team that day. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, we're over here at twitch.tv/Lawler, hanging out, doing a Q&A with everybody in chat. We're going to switch on over to the YouTube comments and answer some of those before we get back into the live chat. But if you guys want to hang out with us, Tuesday and Sunday are the days we don't. But other than that, we usually start about 2 in the afternoon. Come hang out with us, twitch.tv/Lawler. Also, if you're a YouTube frog, listen to the chat, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. With that said, let's take a peek at some of these other ones and go from there. We're gonna do the thing that they wish they could do in movies and actually have it make sense. Enhance. Look at the resolution just get bigger. It's crazy. Question comes from Alamantix. Curious as to why team points from previous split affect their chances of making the major in all subsequent splits. To me, it seems more natural to reset the points so that each team has an equal chance of making the current splits major. No. The way that it works is for the reason is they want to reward the teams for performing consistently. In a circuit-based system, I understand the reset concept, but the whole point is you are trying to make sure that the teams that have shown that they are the best get rewarded for being the best. The whole point of open qualifiers is to let anybody come in and compete, but at the end of the day, you need to give advantages to the teams that consistently show they are the better teams. I will say they did change things. No longer are placements done based upon just the overall point totals. So if we pull up the rankings page for everybody, if you're in North America, they would just take your top 8 and be like, all right, that's who gets into the main event, right? That's no longer the case. They now are basing it upon the most 3 recent major events. So they'll look at major, regional 3, regional 2. Based upon performances in those 3 events will determine who gets the bids moving forward, which I think is better. I think recency bias is important. So top 16 is always going to be who gets an auto bid. Top 8 will get into the main event. 9 through 16 will get into the closed qualifier. But qualifiers otherwise are what determine that. You say it seems more natural to reset the points so that each team has an equal chance, which I highly disagree with. I don't think that the concept of it should be fair is a thing. I personally feel that you need to reward those that have shown results. Yo, Dave, thanks for the bits. In order to make it, there needs to be some sort of reward for placement and stuff like that to give them the easier route in. But I will say they do reset who goes to the winter major itself. You have to do results based upon how you do in regional 1, 2, and 3 of winter to get into the winter major. None of the fall major results matter except for your initial seeding and placement into the thing itself. So, and I don't know if that's what you're saying, but let's say it comes time for the World Championship. You had all the points from those splits determined seeds and stuff like that. Let's say that in winter split, Vibrance comes 4th, 2nd, and 1st in regionals. It's possible that they don't even make the major even. That's not true. In the winter split, if Vibrance comes fourth, second, and first in regionals, they will 1000% be in the major. I think you just got your information wrong. They 100% do. I think this person is just misinformed on the situation, which happens. Johnny says, in the coming years, well, he says he's the coming years, but we'll give him a pass. In the coming years, as the minor regions within the RLCS start to become more prominent, do you think that there's a chance that they will increase the amount of teams to make it to Majors Worlds? Yes, 100%. The seeds and how many teams get into each thing is totally changed year to year. They always take results and make adjustments based upon how those results happen. The best example I can give is next split. So for the winter major, they're going to give EU the #1 seed as compared to NA. NA only got the #1 seed because they were the previous world champs, and we haven't had any international competition since. But I can guarantee you, come winter major, EU is going to get the #1 seed overall because they are the most recently won team. Like, that's just how it works. And they make those adjustments. And if we see minor regions keep stepping up and having performances, we keep seeing OCE outperform some of the lower regions, or you see OCE outperform some of the lower teams in like NA or EU or anything like that, the seeding will be adjusted accordingly. They may, if you see like Mina come in and just keep smacking people, then yes, Mina is going to get an additional bid as compared to, you know, Sam, if Sam keeps going 0-3. Like, they will make those adjustments from season or split to split. I don't know if they're going to change it for this year, but you will see in the future, without a doubt, them make those adjustments as they've done in the past. They have to. But it's unfair to make those adjustments when we don't have any history. Historically, we've always seen the lower seeds from NA and EU outperform some of these minor regions. But if that changes and we do see these other regions step up, then 1000% they will make adjustments. So it's a good question, but yes, they will. They've said that actively numerous times. This isn't even a question. This is just a statement. Not gonna lie, I think everyone disagrees with your take on 1v1s. If you guys didn't watch my last Q&A video, obviously go and watch it. But I basically stated that the premises of having a 1v1 pro scene is actually counterintuitive. Like, it actually does not help. By all means, it's cool to have show matches, 1v1 matches, but to proactively allocate time and effort into a pro scene of 1v1s, whether people want to watch it or not, does not matter. And that sounds very abrasive and very abrupt, but I can tell you right now, it is counterintuitive to actively and proactively allocate money, time, prize pools, etc. into a 1v1 pro scene for the RLCS and take focus away from the 3v3 scene that they've spent the last 7 years building. It literally does not work. And while people may want to watch 1v1s and stuff like that, do what Fear and Johnny Boy and stuff did. Go be a content creator, go host these tournaments, go do that stuff. But I can guarantee you it is not smart as a business decision for Psyonix to actually do it. It does not help in any capacity. People may want to say, hey, I want to watch 1v1s, I want to watch the pro scene. And that's not even the argument, which I don't understand like where Polly is coming from on this one. Like, I agree, man. 1v1s are hype. I love watching 1v1s. High level 1v1s are cracked. But just because you want to watch it for the esport and stuff does not mean it's a good business decision. Those are two separate arguments. And that sounds abrasive and stuff, but it's not. It's just, it logistically does not help. It does not help. It's a great way to thrive and build the ecosystem to get new up and coming talent, which shout outs to Johnny Boy, Fear, all the guys that are doing the 1v1 scene stuff. But that's pretty much where it ends. I'm sure someone could make an official league if they wanted to, but Psyonix isn't going to, like, it does not make sense for Psyonix to allocate time and effort into that, which may cause complication within their own primary league. It would not make sense. And chat, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Are there any esports out there that have different queue types for their pro scene? Or does the pro scene usually stick to just one queue type? I don't know any other esports that have like multiple like queues that they use and proactively push. Like, there will be a pro scene where they have different game modes within the esport, and that's part of like the circuit or whatever the heck. Like, you look at Halo, and Halo has like 4 different game modes that they play from, like Stronghold, Oddball, whatever. But the format of how many players are on the roster, all that kind of stuff, remains constant, because if they didn't, it would completely destroy the ecosystem that they spent years developing. It doesn't make any sense. I think people just selfishly want to see 1v1 at a high level, which is fine. Smash has 1s and 2s, but mainly 1s. Smash isn't also officially sanctioned by Nintendo because for some reason Nintendo is big dumb and doesn't want to show love to their scene. But I'm pretty sure like every major esports stays pretty stable. I know Smash definitely has like a ones twos scene, and they also do like crew battles, which are super hype. But I know Nintendo is not the one backing it, and I know Nintendo just like a couple weeks ago, I think, for the first time is showing love to Smash. But that only took 15 years. I think you touched on this last Q&A, but I wanted an insider on how RL player contracts work with their respective orgs, because in other esports like Fortnite and COD, you don't see players moving around nearly as often as we do in RL scene. Is there a specific reason for this, shorter contract lengths or anything else? So I think a lot of it is because Sonics puts a lot of emphasis on making sure the players have the power. And a lot of other esports, usually it's the organizations are the ones that make those decisions. Therefore, usually they're willing to stick things out for a little bit longer. They're trying to make sure things develop, etc. Right? Player contracts and stuff are varying a lot. They change all the time. There's different qualifications of what people's contracts entail, and I don't know if they've changed a lot since I last looked and helped with player contracts. But the general premise is they are paid X amount per month, and they have obligations that they are required. You have to compete to the best of your ability. You've got to scrim. You got to put in so many hours. Some of you may have to stream enough times in a month. So many social media posts, possibly. Like all those things are different based on the team. Whether the organization gets a percentage of the prize pool or not, which I don't think most do. And then there's also like incentive-based contracts where based on if you get X position, this split, that split, you get a bonus. If you guys make major, you get a bonus. If you perform X amount at major, you get a bonus. If you go to the world championship, there's different incentives. So you may have like a higher or lower salary, and then based on how you perform, you get pay bumps. I know that applies to like coaches and managers too. But all that stuff is totally different. But I think the biggest reason why you see a bunch of things moving around is because the spots are not held by the organizations. They're held by the players. Like if a team of players is just like, we don't want to be with this organization anymore, and the contract is done, like it's expired, we're no longer in contract, that team is just screwed and has to go find a new team while the players still retain the spot. So because of that, the players have a lot of power in determining when roster changes and things happen, and the orgs just have to go along with that. It's not like the orgs are like, hey, I want to go buy this player and import him from other team because I think he's really good. The players are primarily the ones being like, we want to play with this guy because it's better. And it makes sense to an extent. I think any team, even if orgs did own the spot, they're still going to ask the players like, yo, who are you guys considering? What kind of stuff do you think is a viable option? Who do you think is available? Like, you should 100% have an active and open conversation with your players about who they want to play with. Because if they're not happy with the situation, but it's totally different from like League of Legends and stuff, I think. League of Legends, like sometimes they just see like this crazy talent from South Korea and they're like, yep, that guy's an absolutely cracked AD carry. We're going to suck for a split while you guys build chemistry. But then we expect him to be world class like he was, and he dumpstered on all of us at the World Championships. That stuff happens a little bit more, but most of the time, I think it's just because players are the ones that make those decisions. And some of those players are 15, 16. I mean, case in point, you look at all the roster rumors going on right now. FaZe performed top 4 at the major. And there's rumors, and hopefully those rumors aren't true, just because I think FaZe has a ton of potential. But like, if FaZe gets rid of Illusion, it's like, what? You never know. You never know. It's pretty crazy. Hi, Lawler. Question for next Q&A. Why do we never hear about buyouts in Rocket League? Are there just no public reporters who have the appropriate connections? I mean, from my perspective, there's just Shift, who is generally credible, but they never talk about buyouts. It's not like my business to know or anything, which supported other esports, traditional sports. Yeah, it's something that I hope becomes more public. It was Cloud9. When they recently purchased one of their new rosters, they actually detailed all the salaries, all the costs, all that kind of stuff. They put it all out into detail. Because you're right, in traditional sports, all that stuff is made public. And I do think eventually esports will get to that point where there's a lot more transparency. And that's actually really good for everybody when that stuff is out there in the public, because then you know what the active rates are. You can have comparison. Like if anyone in your job life tells you're not allowed to discuss salary or rates or your hourly rates with other employees, kind of a sign. The reason why you and your fellow employees want to know how much each other makes is to make sure that you're getting compensated what you're due. If I'm said player and I find out other player who most agree is either the same level of me or not, if not worse, but he's getting compensated way more, that gives you argument and power to go to your organization and be like, hey, like, I think I'm worth this much. And if they're like, no, you're not, like, we're not going to pay you that, you have the right, once your contract expires, to go search and find a new team that will compensate you if money is the concern. So like, hopefully in the future, those contracts and those concepts will basically become more public, because it is better for argument standpoints and everything else. I can tell you, we as RLCS commentators, when I was with them, we would discuss that kind of stuff just because we wanted to make sure that everybody was taken care of. I talk with other commentators all the time when I get hired for gigs. Yo, what are your rates? Make sure you're asking for this much. Because if you're willing to take way less than I am, then they have the ability to use that as a counter argument and be like, well, you know, I think your rates are a little bit too high. We're gonna go with somebody else. So like, there's pros and cons to all of it, without a doubt. You're definitely taking risks when that stuff happens. But if organizations start talking about that stuff publicly and we start getting to know that stuff, I think it does add a little bit more professionalism, I would say, to the esport. But most of the time, like, there is some of those things that I do know. Like, there's certain contracts that I've heard about, like cost rates. I know for a fact how much beast mode is being offered right now by some of the teams that he's being offered by. I know exactly how much they're offering him. But like, that stuff is not mine to share. That is something that I will never put out. That is something that I think I personally, like as a moral thing, will make sure that the organization or whoever is involved with it puts that information out without me doing it. I don't think that's my place to do. And I could be wrong on that. Maybe I should make that stuff public, but you can assume that any high profile talent, like the Daniels, the Beast Modes, the people that are basically trying out with all top tier organizations, boys are going to get paid. And that's what happens when you're like the best of the best in an industry that's entertainment based. And like, it's insane. And it does seem like an overwhelming amount of people are just like, yeah, I disagree with the 1v1 stuff. But I can tell you guys, I think business-wise, I don't think it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense. To be honest, the fact that RL is an esport hurts me. FGC has always been 1v1, has team battles, and has pro players. Maybe investors are afraid of the possible drama beast between players. Why don't they make RLCS a separate major for 1v1, more tournaments equals more advertising equals more income possibilities? Hurts my brain. See, I don't agree with that. I mean, it might be beneficial and they might be able to make it work, but I just don't know if the player base has enough support to logistically make it happen, especially with all the effort that's going into stuff. Do you think 6-mans is a good way of becoming a pro? Rocket League's kind of unique on like how you get your name out there. A lot of becoming a pro in Rocket League is more so a matter of getting that like recognition as a player. And either A, you grind ranked and you become that player in ranked that everybody goes up against. There's like, gosh, either we get a free win with this kid on my team, or it's going to be a sweat fest if I'm on the other side. Or, you know, 6-mans, which 6-mans, for those that don't know, is a Discord server where based upon your rank and how well you play, you have to be in like a Discord server with communication. And it's basically like a serious version of like scrims to an extent. The ability to, I guess, put your name out there and showcase like, yo, I am queuing against certain players and I am improving. You have the ability to basically showcase your skill and climb in this server. But at the end of the day, it just comes out with the exposure that you get based upon performance. As terrible as ranked is as a place to showcase if you're good or not, like ranked is not an ideal scenario. If you're a player that is grinding and playing, I mean, you can look at the Daniels, the Aquas, the new up and comers. These kids are in ranked just clapping some people, and people are like, God, these kids are good. And then they start playing 6-mans and everything else. And after a certain point, you're going to get recognized. You know, it's the same thing of being like a player high level on the leaderboards, right? Like, even though ranked isn't going to be the end all to be all to show your skill set, it is going to be a good starting point, right? If you're top of leaderboards, if you're like top 10, top, 15 in leaderboards and a bunch of different playlists, most people are going to look at that and be like, okay, this guy's pretty solid probably. And most likely you're going to be running into a bunch of pros in ranked. So it's very likely that ranked is kind of the initial. If you can climb in ranked and you're doing well in ranked, that's sick. And then 6-mans if you want more structured ranked, if you want to consider it that way.